The United States government system roots back way before its own time. We know the basics of this were laid out by the founding fathers, but they go back much further, like the government and philosophies of ancient Greece and Rome, but they also have major influences from other things such as religions and, later on, famous Enlightenment philosophers. We had gotten some of this influence through Babylon, which gave us Hammurabi's Code, which was the idea of an eye for an eye. This code had given us the now commonplace idea of more accessible and readable laws and regulations. It is also commonly used to justify the death penalty and other seemingly extreme measures. Because of it being one of the first places that had a governmental system where decisions were voted on for the people and by the people, we can root our main governmental system and ideas of a democracy way back to ancient Greece. These roots can also, in part, help to explain the extremely strict voting requirements we had when we were first founded. Ancient Rome was extremely similar to ancient Greece, and with another successful government, this furthered the idea of us having a democracy. Other than just backing a democracy, ancient Rome had given us a few different ideas that we had taken from them, such as the ideas of separation of powers and checks and balances within the government. Because of its immense popularity, Christianity had a massive impact on the guiding principles of our government. Some of the biggest ideas that Christianity and the Bible had given us were the ideas of basic human rights and basic equalities. These ideas had become extremely prevalent in moving along the social reform in the mid-1800s. Like Christianity, Judaism was another major guiding religion within our own government. Because of its similarities to Christianity, it was often used to justify the same ideas. So as well as helping with our own social reform movement, it also helped to spread the philosophy of going against what you believe to be truly unjust. The Magna Carta was us earning basic rights and calling out England's king. These issues are part of why we now have the U.S. Also had three big points: religious freedom, the right of owning inherited property, and protection from excessive taxes. These things, later, had become the foundation for our own laws and regulations. Roger Williams, an author and founder of the colony of Rhode Island, was the man that defined the phrase liberty of conscience. Based on his writings and beliefs, this phrase basically centers around three concepts: freedom of religion, freedom of lawful religious practices, and equal treatment regardless of one's religion. The Enlightenment era was a movement that came over Europe where people wanted to learn more about science and actual facts. The Enlightenment ideas and philosophers had a massive impact on our own philosophies and furthered the idea of independence, as well as pushing for the biggest idea and system within our own government, which is the direct democracy. John Locke was one of three major Enlightenment philosophers. His famous idea of life, liberty, and estate was clearly prevalent in the Constitution. He also coined the phrase pursuit of happiness, which replaced the word estate. Lastly, he was the main man that pushed for the idea of the government only existing for the people, in separation of church and state. Like ancient Rome's influence, the famous Enlightenment philosopher, historian, and judge, Baron de Montesquieu, helped to cement some of the most important powers within our government. The main things that he pushed for were the ideas of separation of powers, which gave us our three branches, and checks and balances, which gave each branch regulation power over the others. Like many others, Jean-Jacques Rousseau helped to push us to the point of having a direct democracy, where citizens vote for their leaders directly. But he was most notable for moving along the idea of the government only existing to serve its people, which still governs many of our policies today and fuels many political debates to this day. The Declaration of Independence was probably the biggest movement towards us getting the government and society in which we have today. The article basically just did two main things. First off, it declared independence from Europe, and at the same time challenged them a bit. Secondly, it declared itself a nation and united all of the 13 colonies. Articles of Confederation were written after the Declaration of Independence and was the predecessor to the Constitution. It basically established a national government and its precedence over that of the state's power. But this fell pretty fast because, out of fear because of Great Britain's controlling government, it limited the central government's power by way too much. Then there were the many founding fathers who had all the knowledge, came together, and wrote a new national code, the Constitution. There are three main parts to the Constitution: the preamble, which was an introduction and an explanation; the 7 articles, which explain the government structure and how the document could be changed; And lastly, the amendments, which was for the actual articles. One of the founding fathers, James Madison, is commonly referred to as the father of the Constitution. He had been a major sponsor for the first 10 amendments and played an extreme role in getting us the first one. The First Amendment being the main rights of freedom, which include freedom of speech, freedom of press, and freedom of religion. Then there have been the millions of people that helped to push for the 13th Amendment. Most notably from that crowd were people such as Martin Luther King Jr., Abraham Lincoln, and Malcolm X. These such people pushed the 13th Amendment to the point of it getting passed. This amendment was supposed to be the final true abolishment of slavery within the United States of America. Adam Smith, Carnegie, and Rockefeller all helped dramatically within modern economics of the United States. Adam Smith popularized economic freedom and the ideas of free trade and free markets. Carnegie and Rockefeller then basically showed these ideas of economic freedom and when it should be capped, as well as defining and showing what a monopoly looks like. Then there were numerous people like Ida B. Wells and Alice Paul that dramatically helped to push and ratify the 19th Amendment. Through mass protests asking for suffrage, thousands of quote-unquote normal people helped to push the United States to the point of ratifying the 19th Amendment in August of 1920. This amendment finally gave women an equal right to vote. All in all, there have been tons and tons of people that have helped to shape the United States government. This ongoing change in the United States of America is what shapes what we all know and have today. So even though there might be some big names that come to mind, the United States government has been shaped by much more and will continue to change all throughout history.